Is your biological clock ticking, or have you thrown it out the window? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I want to talk about the concept of being child-free by choice. That's a very popular topic that I'm seeing coming up a lot on social media. There are people who are making their entire online personas about being child-free by choice. It's a really big topic right now, so I wanted to kind of dive into this a little bit. Now, first of all, I want to start out by saying I am making this video completely judgment-free. I firmly believe that everybody should make the decision that is right for them about things like marriage, children, like huge life-altering decisions like that. If you are somebody who doesn't have kids but wants kids, welcome. If you are somebody who doesn't have kids, who doesn't want kids, welcome. If you have kids and you don't want kids, that problem is above my pay grade. There is this big trend in women online that are child-free by choice. Now, it's interesting because I mentioned in another video a little bit about this topic and the fact that I don't have kids, and I called myself childless, and somebody pointed out to me that apparently the current terminology is if you want kids but you don't have them yet, you are considered childless. If you don't want kids, you're considered child-free. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm probably gonna mess up that terminology at some point in the video. I apologize now if I use the terminology wrong. I primarily talk in my content about masculine and feminine energies, and I just want to state that I don't look at things like feminine energy or masculine energy, but in this case feminine energy, as like superficial societal markers, like, you know, if a woman likes to wear pink, or if a woman has table manners, or, you know, again, if a woman is married, or if a woman has, you know, kids, or anything like that. I believe feminine energy is an energy. It's an open, receptive energy. I often use biological terms like the masculine being penetrating, the feminine being like open, as ways of explaining masculine and feminine energies. But none of this means that you actually have to, even have sexual intercourse, or that you have to procreate or anything in order to be in your feminine energy. I don't believe that whether or not you have children, whether or not you are able to have children, whether or not you want to have children, defines your feminine energy at all. In fact, I actually believe that a woman, the woman's biology that is connected with feminine energy, absolutely translates into a woman's life in ways that have nothing to do with actually giving birth to a baby. I'm very big on women connecting to their menstrual cycles. I think, you know, working on your body and your health and being in a fertile body with a healthy menstrual cycle is good for a woman's health, regardless of whether or not she actually wants to have a baby. I also believe that the cycles that we go through in our menstrual cycles, in our lives, can absolutely connect to death and rebirth, birthing things in life that have nothing to do with actually birthing a baby. You know, our ovulation phase is really great for conception of ideas, the conception of a new creative project. You can go through those phases and you can actually go through the process of like birthing something into your life. It doesn't have to be a baby. I believe those things are all connected. As the feminine, we are creation. So we are about creating things, and a baby can absolutely be one of those things that we create. It doesn't always have to be something that we create. It can be birthing a lot of different things into the world. So I don't ever want women to think that, well, first of all, if you can't have a baby, you know, if you're just in a phase in your life where you are not in your season of your childbearing years, whether it be because you are too young and you're coming into that part of your life and learning to embrace your feminine energy at a very young age, or you're in a later stage of your life and you are past your childbearing years, you can still absolutely be in your feminine energy. You can also, you know, cycle with nature. You can cycle with the moon. Your body is going to go through waves and cycles, even if you're not currently having a menstrual cycle. That said, for the majority of women watching, likely are going to be in an age range where you probably are currently in your, what they would call childbearing years, whether or not you decide to have a child or not. But those things don't change. Those natural waves and cycles, and learning to embrace your cycle, learning to embrace the seasons of your life, learning how to move with the waves of your body, trying to work on your fertility, like those things are all good for your health and your body. And taking care of your body, taking care of your beautiful feminine body, and embracing womanhood is a great thing, whether you use that to make a baby or whether you don't. I don't want people to get too confused with, well, if I don't want to have kids, I don't have to care about my fertility. Well, it's probably better for your health that you do. Embracing your menstrual cycle, probably good for your health, not just because you want to have a baby. I have videos where I talk about some of the dangers of birth control, and I understand that that's kind of a complicated thing, because if you absolutely don't want to have kids, you're going to want to be making sure that you don't have that happen. And most contraceptives are going to have side effects. I'm not going to dive into that in this video because this isn't really the video for it, but that's obviously something that you're going to have to, you know, weigh the pros and cons when it comes to that, and I'm not really going to get into that discussion here. But I just want to lay the foundation right now, because I want everybody to know that while I talk about feminine energy, and I talk a lot about traditional values and traditional family values and a lot of the importance of family structure, but I don't believe that you have to have a baby in order to be in your feminine energy. I don't believe that you absolutely have to have the desire to procreate. If you do, great. If you don't, that's cool too. Like, I'm not making this video at all to tell women, well, if you're feminine, you're gonna wanna have a bunch of babies, and if you're not interested in having babies, you're not in your feminine. That's not what I'm here to tell you. If you are watching and you're like, yes, I wanna have a family, and I wanna have babies, and I wanna, you know, I wanna be a mom, and like that's something you've always wanted to do, that's great too. Like, that is wonderful, and connecting to your feminine energy, whether you are a mom, intend to be a mom, or never want to be a mom, is a great thing, I believe, for most women, because most women are going to be their best selves when they connect to their feminine energy. Your feminine energy is your birthright. As women, our birthright is to be in our feminine energy. And in reality, connecting to your feminine energy is actually not about trying to be something you're not. It's actually about connecting back to who you truly are. It might be uncomfortable to connect to your feminine energy, but when you actually get there and get through the blockages that you may have to be in your feminine energy, it's gonna feel like home. It's gonna feel like this is where I belong. And that is regardless of whether you have children or you don't have children. Regardless of whether you chose not to have children or whether you just didn't have children because that's how your life went. There's a few different things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to the trend I'm seeing online of being child-free by choice. One of the criticisms I see of women who are coming online and saying that they are child-free by choice is that it becomes their whole personality. I got to admit, I do think that's kind of annoying. And I also think it's kind of annoying when people make having a child or being a mom their entire personality. Now, nobody has to create content that I think is annoying or not annoying. I mean, that's your decision. Anybody can create content that they want to make as long as you're not doing anything illegal. You create the content you want to make, and you have the brand, the persona, the anything that you want to present. More power to you. I would just encourage women, whether you have kids, don't have kids, want kids, don't want kids, I would encourage you to not limit yourself to that one thing defining you. The feminine in general, so this is most women, is not going to be easily defined by one characteristic. Now, you might be in a season in your life where you feel like that's the thing that you want to talk about, that's the thing you want to focus on. More power to you. But I would say this for, you know, women who have motherhood define them. It can then be really difficult because eventually your children are going to grow. Obviously, you're always going to be a mom, but your children are going to grow. They're going to have their own life. And if you have made them your entire existence, it's going to be really hard for you to let them grow into the person that they're meant to be, and to be able to like let them have their freedom to become their own person and to move on with their life. In the same way that if you define yourself as being, you know, child-free, it really limits you, because it's presenting something about yourself that you are free of, instead of presenting to the world what it is that you are, right? And what it is that you are creating and what it is that you are experiencing. And I just encourage women in any kind of lifestyle to not limit themselves into just viewing themselves as being defined by whether or not they have a husband, whether or not they have kids, whether or not they want to get married, or whether or not they want to have kids. That doesn't define you as a person. If you want to talk about that aspect of your life, cool, great. I would just caution you away from making these things your defining characteristics, because I think that's limiting you, because I think that you are probably, I'm guarantee you that you are more than that. You're more multifaceted than that, especially if you're a feminine being. You probably have a lot of different layers and flavors to you, and I just encourage you to not limit yourself to making that one thing about your personality. I don't mean to say this in a critical way, because I do see a lot of judgment from women who are mothers, who have kids, who are really, really judgmental about women who are child-free. I gotta be honest, I feel like when you see that, it tends to be from women who may be angry that they had kids. Because at the end of the day, I don't really see why that would be something that you would judge someone on. Like, they have kids, they don't have kids, it's their decision. I'm a firm believer, I don't think anybody should have kids if you don't want them. Because I see too many people in the world that have kids that don't really want their kids. I've seen that too many times. I think there's a lot of people out there that had kids because they thought that that's what you were supposed to do. I see that a lot with men, like a lot with men. But I think that happens with women as well. And I don't think anybody should have kids if you're not like sure that you want kids, because it's not fair to the kids. I don't have kids, but there are probably a lot of people who had kids who didn't realize how much work it was going to be, and maybe look back and think like, okay, I didn't really anticipate this, and maybe I should have been more prepared, or maybe I should have thought about this more. And I think that's valid to talk about. I think it's valid for, you know, women who are mothers to talk about the difficulties, the ups and downs of motherhood. And I think it's definitely valid for women who have chosen not to have children to talk about what their life is like. Now, I think this came up, I mean, it's been a trend for a while now, but it came up overwhelmingly when the comedian Chelsea Handler made a video talking about her life as a child-free woman. I didn't watch the whole video, to be honest. I kind of got the gist of it, but people freaked out about it. Like, they absolutely lost their minds that she was presenting this as like being a single child-free woman and this is what my life is like. Just an aside, I'm not really a Chelsea Handler fan, particularly when it comes to her comedy. However, she is a comedian. Whether you think she's funny and like her comedy or not, next to her profession is listed as comedian. She's a professional comedian. She's paid to be funny. Whether you think she's funny or not, that is her job. That's her job description. So I really do believe that she made the video she made in part to be humorous, but people took it really seriously, which I find ironic, because it's usually those same people that when people start criticizing, say like Andrew Tate, they're like, oh, he was just playing a character. When it's like, okay, maybe, potentially, I don't think he was, but maybe he was playing a character or overplaying his personality or something, but he is not a professional comedian. He is not paid to be funny. You may think he's funny, you may think he's entertaining, you may think he could be a comedian. He couldn't be, but let's just say he could be. But he is not a professional comedian. So you can't use him playing a character as an excuse for what he is presenting to the world, which is essentially being an online pimp and manipulating women for money, and then criticize Chelsea Handler, who is a professional comedian, for making a video talking about being child-free as a woman and saying that she's sending a bad message. You see the hypocrisy there? Anyway, a part of Chelsea Handler's video that I think a lot of people were attacking was the idea that she was presenting life as being a child-free woman as being able to like jump on a plane and have lunch in Paris if she wants to. I think that that was humor, because in reality, that's not most people's story. I don't think the vast majority of women who don't have kids are in the position where they can just decide, oh, hey, I'm gonna jump on a private plane and have lunch in Paris. Some, maybe if they live in Paris, but the vast majority of women, with kids or without kids, don't have access to that lifestyle. It's just not reality. My guess is that she did that because it was over exaggerated, because let's be real, it's not most people's reality, in order to make it humorous. Now, it's ironic because you know whose reality that is? Kim Kardashian, who has 4 kids, Kylie Jenner, who has 2. That life is not linked to how many kids you have, right? That life is linked to a lot of other factors that don't have too much to do with whether or not you have kids, which is why I believe it was probably intended to be more humorous. But I've also seen some other videos of some, you know, creators that are not necessarily like celebrity creators making content about their life as a child-free woman, and oftentimes, like, there's one that keeps popping up on my For You page, I don't know her name, but she obviously lives somewhere tropical, and she seems to be kind of like always dancing around, and she's on beaches, and I think she's running an online business or something, and seems to be just very earthy and, you know, just seems to be loving life. And I know that there are people out there who are gonna see that as, oh, she's trying to convince women that if they don't have kids, that this is the life they're gonna have. I can see that, but, you know, let's be real. There's a lot of people online that are convincing people, men and women, that they can have a certain life if they do X, Y, and Z. So this particular, you want to call it manipulation or presentation or influence or something, is not really better or worse than most of the other things you're gonna see on the internet. However, I gotta admit, this idea of like, you know, she's always in nature, she's in flow, she's magnetizing enough money to live, but she's not stressing herself out, she's living a pretty soft life, feels very feminine to me, whether she chooses to bring children into that scenario or whether she doesn't. And I honestly don't remember who this woman's name is, and I don't really want to call her out necessarily, but I do find sometimes that when her videos show up a lot in my feed, there does seem to be this presentation of her like constantly harping on the fact that she's child free. You know, her judgments about men who want to have kids and things like that. And I will admit, sometimes I feel like this is getting a little bit judgy. It's like, I understand if someone wants to present their lifestyle and say, hey, I don't have kids, I'm child free, and this is what my life is like. But when you start shifting into, okay, but I don't want people to judge me for my lifestyle, but I'm gonna judge other people for, you know, men who talk to me who decide that they wanna have kids. Well, it just means you're not a match. Like, if you're living your life and you're like, I'm child free and that's what I want, and you're gonna date, you're gonna have to expect to run into guys who wanna have kids. In the same way, as a woman, if you really wanna have kids and you meet a guy who doesn't wanna have kids, you're not a match. I know it can be hard because sometimes you meet someone that you feel like you're like really connected with, but if that's something that's really important to you, either having kids or not, and that person is not on the same page with it, it's not gonna work. There's gonna be resentment in some way. Like, one of you is gonna end up resenting the other one, and like resentment is gonna kill the relationship. So it doesn't really matter how compatible you are in other ways. Like, that's a big one that you need to be on the same page about. There was also a video that went viral. Again, I don't know who the creator was, but she was talking about her day as a child-free woman, and she had gone to, I don't know if it was the Beyonce or Taylor Swift concert the night before, and how the next morning, because she didn't have kids, she slept in, she relaxed. I forget what she said she did that day, but she did a few things for herself, and then she decided she was going to try a new recipe that she'd been wanting to try. That was like her relaxing weekend day as a child-free woman. And the internet lost its mind, right? Well, I gotta be honest, she sounds like she's having a pretty feminine day. Like, that would be very much my definition of feminine energy. Like, if you feel like your body needs to rest, rest. If you feel like your body wants to, I don't know, do like a slow yoga session that day, or if you feel like your body wants to be creative and try something new in the kitchen or somewhere else or whatever, like, that's being in your feminine energy. And the fact that so many people freaked out about that, I can't help but feel like they were upset that there was a woman in the world that was doing something for herself. When it's like, if a man were to sleep in on a weekend, go off and play golf with his buddies or go fishing with his buddies all day, and come home and just watch a game or something on a weekend, no one would bat an eye. People would be like, oh yeah, he's probably got a wife and a bunch of kids. Like, no one would think twice. Yet, if a woman does have a family and children, she's essentially expected to suffer for it. And it's almost like a badge of honor the more a woman suffers for it. If this woman had kids and a husband, then why shouldn't she be able to maybe go to a concert? Because I mean, going to like a Beyonce or Taylor Swift concert is not an everyday occurrence, right? Why shouldn't she be able to do something as a night out for herself and then sleep in the next day and have her husband give the kids breakfast so she can have a rest day and then do something for herself? Like, why is that such a foreign concept for a woman that has children, that a woman can only experience doing something for herself if she doesn't have children, and that doing something for herself is seen as selfish by the world because she should be devoted 100% solely to suffering for her family? When we don't put that same suffering on men, that like me time for men is absolutely considered acceptable. I actually saw a study the other day that talked about, like, I forget what the exact number was, but it was something like 80% or something of the time women take their vacation time from work for something that has to do with taking care of their family. Whereas like men take like 90% or something. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was some like ridiculously high number. Men take the majority of their vacation time for themselves. Whereas when women take vacation time, the majority of the time, it's for taking care of their family. And I understand that people are concerned about the fact that we are dropping in population, fewer people are having babies, which probably has a lot more to do with the economy than it has to do with any influencers online telling people whether or not they should or shouldn't have kids. Let's be real. Inflation is not going to make people want to have more babies. Like, people are struggling economically, and one thing that people don't fully understand about women and their reproductive systems is that women's bodies, whether you actually want to have kids or whether you don't want to have kids, which is a mental thing, right? Women's bodies are created to know when it is safe to carry children and when it is not safe to carry children. Not to say that a woman can't get pregnant under unsafe conditions, but typically speaking, if a woman knows or a woman feels like the conditions she's in are unsafe, it's going to try to do whatever it can to not get pregnant. Most likely what's going to happen is it's going to kill a woman's libido. Now, many women override that, but if you as a woman are feeling like you don't have a libido, or like you are not interested in sex, or you're finding your partner like all of a sudden repulsive and nothing else has really changed, like he's still the same person that he's always been, or you haven't shifted in, because like birth control can affect that kind of stuff too. If there hasn't been any profound shift like in him per se, or there hasn't been a profound shift in like you hormonally, and you're all of a sudden turned off by your partner, it's probably because you don't feel safe. Because women's bodies are going to try to stop you from getting pregnant in a situation that's unsafe. One of the reasons too why honestly, I really do believe that's the main reason why women shut down and don't want to have sex with their partner. You hear the story over and over again of men who are like, why doesn't she want to sleep with me? Why doesn't she want to sleep with me? She's never interested in sex. If the woman is like, yeah, I'm not interested in sex right now, and you can't bring yourself to sleep with your partner, it's your body telling you that something is going on. There are women out there who override that, and that's why I'm a huge advocate of women never overriding their feeling of not wanting to sleep with someone. And that's not to say that like, I think that if you never want to sleep with your partner and like there's no sexual attraction going on, I don't think you should just like leave it and be like, okay, we're just not gonna have sex from now on, right? That's not really healthy either. But you have to look at something deeper, because it's probably something deeper going on. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of men will say like, oh, well, women just want money. Well, money equals safety. Let's be real. If a woman knows that a man is going to be able to financially provide for a baby, her body is going to feel safer knowing that her baby is going to be taken care of. She's going to not necessarily automatically open sexually, but she's going to be more likely to be able to relax and open sexually because it's going to feel like a safe environment. Not saying that a man just having money automatically makes him a safe man. I'm saying that knowing that that area of security is taken care of is gonna help open a woman. Knowing that a man is presenting himself as someone who's gonna be a good husband and father, that can open a woman more, because she's gonna feel like, oh, he's a safe partner for me. That's oftentimes, and I absolutely experienced this, like in my last serious relationship, where I was completely shut down to the point where I thought there was something like medically wrong with me. And I didn't realize until like going through the breakup and everything, and there were a lot of things that came to light that I didn't know were actually going on, but like my body knew, but like my brain didn't know. I realized once the relationship was over and I got to sort of look at everything in hindsight, I realized my body was shutting down because it was telling me, do not have a baby with this man, because this is not a safe situation to have a baby in. And looking back on it, I'm so grateful. I wanted to have a family. I absolutely wanted to have a baby. My body wouldn't let me because it knew that it was not a safe situation to be in. For women out there, if you are in a relationship, or whether you are on the fence or you don't really know or something, if your body is shutting down, be aware of that. Like, pay attention to that. Like, look into what's going on that's deeper. It may not necessarily be a safety thing, but it often is. But I say this to say that the economic struggles that are going on in our current society, which are like astronomical, and I'm certainly not an economist, women are naturally going to freak out and decide not to have kids if they don't feel safe to have children. So if you as a woman are feeling like you're feeling a shift in maybe you did want to have kids and now you're feeling like you might not want to, if you're somebody who's like, I do want to have kids, but like right now it just doesn't feel like a good time, it's probably very much tied to the situations going on right now with so many people struggling financially, the economy struggling. Like, there's probably a lot of reasons that are absolutely normal for you to feel like it's not safe to have children right now. So if that's what you're feeling, please know that that's normal. I think that that's probably the reason why many women are openly talking about going child-free. I also think it's more acceptable now to say that than it used to be in the past. I don't believe that shaming women or pressuring women or scaring women into having children is a good option, because then you're going to get a whole lot of mothers and probably fathers who are having kids who are probably not going to be great parents because they got into this situation out of fear. But I also find it interesting that a lot of the people, and it's not just men, but there are a lot of men out there who are very vocal about kind of shaming women for deciding not to have children, or trying to scare women into getting married and having children, or, you know, shame and fear are big tactics that we like to use in our society, which I think are counterintuitive, but that's a whole other discussion. But yet the people that are so hell-bent on that because they think it's so important for women to have children, or for women to want to get married and to have children, they never think to improve men, to make men be better husbands and fathers, to make the life of a woman having children seem more appealing by her feeling like she's not in it on her own. This might be controversial, but I'm gonna say this. Women were not intended to be single mothers doing it all by themselves. And I say that as women who are actually like single and mothers. I also say that as women who are single mothers who are married, because there are a lot of women out there who are married single mothers. They're married to the father of their kids, and they have to treat him like another child. That's a very common dynamic right now. Women were intended to give birth and then have a mother and a father raising the child, and to also have a community around them raising the child together. That's how we were intended as humans to raise children. I know a lot of people want to argue about the biology, and they want to argue about, no, men are supposed to spread their seed and women are just supposed to take care of the kids. But that doesn't raise the best children. That, historically speaking, that's not how you get the best children. But we have women who are raising kids on their own, whether they're married or whether they're not. And we have women who don't really have communities. Like, there's not the community feeling that we used to have, which is ironic because we have more access online to more people, but we don't have families and communities nearly as much as we used to. It's interesting how so many people will use shame and fear to convince women to have children, but yet they won't actually think of, well, hey, how could we make a woman being a mother feel like a more fulfilling experience? Like, how do we, first of all, get fathers to step up and be the masculine leaders of the family that we need them to be? And how do we create communities for women to be raising children in, so that women don't feel like if they have a child that they have to suffer for the rest of their life for their children and their husband? Because I gotta be honest, a lot of these women that are talking about their child-free lives, while some of them are extreme, like you have the Chelsea handlers that are, you know, like, hey, I can jump on a private plane and go to Paris. Well, most women, if they just don't have kids, are not going to be living that life, right? But the idea of actually being able to take some time for yourself to do something is pretty appealing to most people. We don't expect men to sacrifice that. I've seen so many videos of women talking about having a baby and just wanting to take a shower, and they can't even get their partner to like watch the baby for like a few minutes so the new mom can take a shower. That's the situation we're in. And if that's the case for the majority of new mothers, I can kind of see why there are a lot of women that are afraid to have children. I also had kind of an interesting interaction on social media recently that actually triggered me to want to talk about this topic. Is I saw a clip from a woman that was talking about how she hasn't been spending her life thinking about wanting to have kids. She's been waiting till she meets a man who she wants to have kids with. I commented on that. I gave it a positive comment because I actually think that's a really great mindset to be in, and I got some people who agreed with me, but I got a lot of people that disagreed. But I think a lot of people didn't really understand exactly what we were talking about, or what she was talking about, or what I was talking about. So I want to clarify that a little bit. For me personally, and again, this is me sharing my story, I always wanted to be a mom. I kind of always assumed that I would be a mom. However, I made the decision very early on that I was not going to have a child unless it was with a man that I truly believed was going to be a good husband and father. And that man did not come into my life. And I know there's a lot of people that are gonna say, oh, you probably met him already and you rejected him because you wanted this guy or you wanted the... No, I guarantee you it's not the case. I mean, I actually got married at a certain point, I think because I panicked. I will fully admit I got married because my biological clock was ticking. I had found a guy who kind of was good on paper and said he wanted the same things that I wanted, and then we got married and it became very obvious to me he did not want the same things that I wanted. That's actually for me when my body shut down, and I realized later on that what was actually going on was my body was telling me you don't have a baby with him. Because I realize now in hindsight, if I had had a child with this person, I would have been putting my child through all the same childhood traumas that I had to go through. And I had to break the cycle. And I remember going through my divorce and actually sitting with myself and thinking like, okay, if this is your last chance to have a baby, do you still want to go through with this divorce? And overwhelmingly the answer was yes. It killed me. It actually broke my heart. In fact, I remember a moment where I was listening to like a phone message that my divorce lawyer had left me, and he referenced my marriage as being short and because there were no children in the marriage. And I literally broke down on the floor and started sobbing. Like, I don't think I've ever cried that hard in my life. And of course I knew that we didn't have kids. I mean, it was such a difficult moment for me. I'm emotional about it now. But I know in my heart it was the right thing to do. I find it funny when people say things like that women who don't have kids are selfish. Because for me, the least selfish thing I've ever done in my life is not have a child. Because I could have if I wanted to. Like, I could have gone out and found a guy and gotten pregnant and had a kid if I really wanted to. But for me, I couldn't bring a child into the world unless I knew that the man I was doing it with was going to truly be a good husband and father. And because that man didn't come into my life, I chose not to have a kid. Now, I realize it's not everybody's story, and I realize there are people out there that it doesn't matter who they meet, they don't want to have a child with them. And that's okay, like, no judgments. And there are some people out there that went out and had a baby with somebody that they look back and they say, I shouldn't have had a kid with them. No judgments there either. Like, we all have our experience, and we all learn and we all grow. I personally really do believe, instead of putting shame and fear into women that they have to have a baby and they have to have it within a certain window and putting that pressure on women, that we should be encouraging women to find the person that they actually want to have a baby with, that they actually want to share their life with, that they actually want to be a partner in life with, and then decide to have a baby instead of chasing the baby, chasing the dream of having a baby. Because what happens is women then often make a really bad choice about who to have that child with. Now, I understand there are men out there who are going to present themselves as a good husband and father and then turn out to not be. My heart goes out to you. I get it. It's still gonna happen. But I think we can reduce the chances of that happening if we teach women to look for the man that actually will be a great husband and father, as opposed to trying to say, oh, I want to hurry up and have a family, I want to have a family, I have a family. Because what happens is oftentimes then women choose a man that just happens to be there. It's the cab light theory. I know that there's that theory on Sex and the City. Let's be real, both men and women have the cab light theory, which is basically like, when you're ready to settle down, get married, have a family, the next person that gets in the cab is the person you're gonna do it with. Right? Some people say men do it, some people say women do it. I think people do it in general. Like, I don't think it's just a male-female thing. I think people tend to do that. Like, women tend to do it because their biological clock. Men have their own version of a biological clock that I think when they decide it's time to settle down and get married, it's just like, well, whoever I'm with. And I think that can be really dangerous, because you could end up being with someone that just happens to be there but is not the right partner for you. I also understand now that like there's more options than there ever have been before, and I think you can get caught up in like always looking for something better, and I'm not saying that that's a healthy thing either. I think if you are caught up in that, that's probably some kind of a trauma response or something that you need to work on. It's very common nowadays, especially with how we're conditioned with social media and dating apps and stuff like that. So if you are dealing with that kind of like nothing's ever good enough, I encourage you to work on that. I also firmly believe that one of the problems we have in our society is that we jump into relationships, particularly the physical aspects of relationships, really quickly. Women do have a tendency to emotionally bond with a guy. I know it's not universal. I know there's women who say that they don't, but there tends to be a bonding that happens when you get into a physical relationship. And people get into physical relationships too soon. It pushes the relationship forward. Not necessarily, like I don't mean like sleeping with somebody automatically makes you in a relationship, but I think people, they go on a date, they jump into the physical, they jump into this like situationship thing. Somebody could very well end up pregnant, you end up stuck together, and that's why, I really do believe that's why you see those, like the shut up ring thing. 10 years have gone by, they've got a couple kids, and he finally proposes. Like, I really do believe that those are people that probably never should have gotten together in the first place, but now they have a kid, now they're in this situation, they're kind of going through the motions, and if these two had just gone out on a date and maybe taken more time just to get to know each other instead of like jumping in bed together and like jumping into this kind of like convenience where the man was getting convenient sex and the woman was probably getting emotionally attached, and then you end up with a kid and stuff. If people had just taken the relationship slower, dated, and gotten to know each other, I think you'd see a lot fewer couples that are just like dragging out these relationships or just having kids, and then one day, 10 years into it, she gets a shut up ring and he gives like a horribly offensive vow speech at his wedding, or smashes the cake in her face, or like something obnoxious. Like, I feel like we could avoid that if in relationships we just dated and got to know each other and realized like, hey, sometimes we're just not compatible, instead of being in this mindset of like, I went on a date with this person. And I've done it too. Like, I've jumped into relationships way too quickly, way too soon. So I'm not judging people that do that. I'm just saying that I've learned from experience that, not even having kids with anybody, but like jumping into a connection with somebody too quickly when this person probably was just meant to be like 1 or 2 dates, and then you guys went on your separate ways and you didn't have to deal with each other the rest of your lives, you know? Like, the fact that we jump so quickly into physical intimacy, into relationship, we don't actually take the time to get to know each other. Now, we don't necessarily jump into commitment right away, but we jump into this weird gray area of like a situationship like so quickly, and then we just kind of stay there and ride it out until someone either breaks up with someone or someone's like, okay, hey, whatever, I'll give you a ring to shut you up, kind of thing. So the gist of this video is, if you are child-free by choice, I respect your choice, absolutely. If you want to have kids and you haven't had them yet, then that's great too. I believe you should manifest what you want in your life. So if you really want to have kids, great, imagine your life with kids, but don't get so caught up in that you end up deciding to partner with somebody who you don't know is going to be a good husband and father. Someone who isn't showing up already as that man, as a great man, who isn't someone who has the qualities that you're looking for in someone. And honestly, the best way of finding a man that you do want to have a child with, that you do believe is going to be a good husband and father, is, first of all, as women, we have to pace the relationship. It can be so easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new relationship. Women are really susceptible to falling for love bombing. We can ignore red flags and we get really excited about someone, or we can get really excited about some, like, sometimes some superficial things like the way he looks or how much money he has or something like that, and we ignore a lot of the potential red flags, which is why it's so important for women to pace a relationship. Secondly, I think the big thing that women need to understand is, like, once the honeymoon phase is over, you're not necessarily in this like goo-goo-eyed like love phase or something, and you're actually starting to see him for who he really is, then ask yourself, like, is this a man who has the characteristics of a man I would want my daughter to be dating? Because that's probably who your daughter is going to look to as inspiration for the men she dates in the future. And also, if I have a son, is this man the type of man I would want my son to grow up to be? And that's your answer. And I do believe if you don't want to have kids, like, you know you don't want to have kids, be upfront about it. You can be upfront and honest, and if it scares anybody away, they're not your person. If you do want to have kids and you do want to have a family in the future, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go into a date and be like, I want to have kids, let's have kids now. But like, if you are someone who wants to have kids in the future, be upfront about it. If that scares someone off, they're not your person. But please don't think that whether or not you have kids, it defines your feminine energy. It absolutely doesn't. And please don't let anybody judge and shame you for the decisions that you're making in your life that involve you and your body. Because the people out there that are judging and shaming you for either wanting to have kids or not wanting to have kids, they're not going to show up and raise your kids. I hope this was helpful, both to women who may be struggling with whether or not that they want to have kids, or maybe women who are struggling with not having kids and they kind of wish that they did, or are feeling guilt or shame around either wanting to have kids or not wanting to have kids, or for women who have just decided not to but are getting a lot of pressure from society. I hope that this video was helpful for sharing some different perspectives on this topic. Whatever you decide is what you decide. I'm not here to judge or shame anybody, because honestly the world does that enough for women. Yeah, this was just a topic that was coming up a lot on social media, and I just kind of wanted to share some of my thoughts on some of the drama that was happening around it. And also too, because I've been talking a lot about celebrity couples and celebrity relationships and stuff, celebrities have made it very trendy to have kids because it gets them attention, and a lot of celebrity couples are having kids because it's good PR. It's a good business investment, which is why you're seeing a lot of celebrities like trademark their kids' names and like invest in their kids' fame and things like that. As I've said in previous videos, I really would encourage you to not use celebrity culture too much to influence your life. In the same way as influencer culture, I don't think that people online that you don't know should necessarily affect your decisions. Tune into your body and to yourself and what you really want, because only you can make that decision for yourself. So yeah, if you guys have any other topics that you would like me to talk about and to dive into, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you, and I love your suggestions. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to learn more about feminine energy, I actually have a book, The Dark Feminine Energy Guided Journal, that you can check out, as well as some online courses. Details are in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.